Well, good evening and good morning here in the United States. Thanks to those of you who are joining us. Today is our International Students Opening of School update. I'm your host, Zack Lehman, the head of school, and I'm joined today by my partner, Dr. Spencer, our medical director at the Hill. And we're glad to have a number of you joining us here today. We did this update last night for our domestic families, and it went pretty well. We answered a lot of questions and provided a lot of information, and we hope to do the same today. I'm going to make a presentation, give you an overview of the opening of the school year, address some of the COVID-19 steps that we're taking at the beginning of the year. And I have a few prepared questions that I'm going to answer, but I do invite any of you or all of you to ask your own questions. And there's a few ways to do that. You can enter a question in the Q&A box, which is at the middle of the bottom of your screen or top of your screen, depending on how you have it set up. Only Dr. Spencer and I can see those questions, so feel free to ask any question. We won't mention your name. If you'd like to put a question in the chat box, everyone can see your name when you do that. So that's just a advisory. And then lastly, when we get to the Q&A section at the end today, if you'd like to raise your hand in the participant box, we can call on you and we can even hear your voice if you'd like. I am, as you can probably see behind me, I'm coming to you live from a small town in Western Maine in the northeast part of the United States. I'm at a log cabin here, so it's a pretty rustic environment, but I do have good Wi-Fi. So trying to squeeze in just a few more days of vacation before we head back to campus at the end of this week. So without further ado, I'd like to get started, and thanks again for joining us. The first thing I wanted to do was provide you with an overview of the school year calendar. Nothing on this has changed at this point. As you can see, we have an arrival period outlined there in yellow, which begins on Monday with some of our preseason American football players. And that will run through September 6th when we have our different waves of students arriving, and we'll get to that in a moment. The fall term of classes begins on September 7th and runs through November 19th. We have our H term, which we'll talk about a little bit more, from December 1st through the 17th between Thanksgiving break and the winter holiday recess. We'll then start up with our winter term in January this year, and then end with our spring term after spring break in March through June 1st. So that's our overall calendar for the year. Drilling down a little bit deeper into the first part of the year, I mentioned before that we have our preseason fall athletics period, which runs from this coming Monday, which we're excited about, to welcome back students to campus for American football. And that will run through September 2nd. From September 2nd to September 6th, we will have all of our students arriving on campus in different waves, and we'll talk about that. The fall term you can see there is broken up into two sections, before and after our fall parents weekend and fall holiday weekend, which is a long weekend. We are still planning to have parents weekend on campus. That remains our plan. Of course, we'll have to see how that goes. And then we have our Thanksgiving recess, which runs from November 19th through the 30th. And then we begin the H term. For those of you who are returning families, you know that last year we ran a 6-week H-term program, which was a remote program. It was very successful. Students were able to choose from different classes and independent projects and programs. We had a handful of students on campus, but for the most part, our students were remote during the winter months. The program itself was very successful, so we brought it back this year. But for a shorter period of time. It's just a 2.5-week period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The plan is as follows. We hope that this will be an on-campus program, and we're offering classes and other options for students to be on campus and take these interesting classes, experiential programs, and participate in their co-curricular activities. Students may apply to do an independent program at home or somewhere else. So an internship, community service, a job, they can apply for that. It has to meet certain criteria. And so for international students, that may be something that you prefer, so that you would come home at the beginning of Thanksgiving recess and not need to return until early January for the winter term. The student still would be working. Of course, if your student is a winter athlete, they'll want to be on campus. We've designed the H term such that if we had to, we could have all students remote during that time period, like we did last year. We're hoping that's not the case. We're hoping that things are manageable at that point, and we'll just have to wait and see. But we'll make that decision earlier in the fall term so that everyone can plan accordingly, and students will start selecting their courses and applying for independent projects between now and that time. So obviously it's a little bit far off and we can't make any full decisions at this point, but our plan remains that this whole fall term is 100% in person. All of our students are on campus and we're excited about that. Many of you are starting to prepare to head this way. Some of you are already in the States, and we're excited to see you on the first day of your time at Hill, whatever day that might be. And so here are the dates laid out. August 23rd, our preseason American football players will join us on campus. There's about 47 of those students. On August 26th, just a few days later, all of our other preseason invited athletes are coming back to campus. That's about 150 or 200 students that are coming back for preseason athletics in the fall. Again, these are invited athletes. So if your child hasn't been invited, not to worry, they'll still get to play sports in the fall. This is just for our top varsity athletes who come back about a week and a half early. On September 2nd, our invited student leaders come back. These are our mostly 5th and 6th form students who have been appointed as prefects, as head of the Honor Council, as head of the Student Government Association, and a handful of international ambassadors. Again, you would know if you were in this group, and you would know that you were coming back on September 2nd. Also on September 2nd, we have a group of students, I think it's maybe 30 or so, who are coming back for sort of a pre-season program for our theater called the Theater Boot Camp. It's a 3-day program where the students do a couple of performances on September 4th. Some of you may be invited to that. I'm not sure. But if you are, you'll be back on September 2nd. All 3rd form students, those are our newest students, our 9th graders, return to campus on September 3rd. This is domestic and international. Our goal this year was to have an extended orientation for our 3rd form students, since many of them had an unusual year last year, and we wanted to address some potential learning and social deficiencies and gaps that they may have had, and also just orient them to campus and get to know them better, and for each of them to get to know their classmates better. So they have a couple extra days than the other students. If you are a new 4th, 5th, or 6th form student, so 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, you are scheduled to return on September 4th. There's one tricky item here. If you are a returning student, you were a Hill student last year, but you were remote for the entire year, and you never came to campus, we are considering you, just for the purpose of orientation, as a new 4th, 5th, and 6th form international student. So you can come back on that day on September 4th. You should come back on that day just to get yourself oriented to campus. On September 5th, all of our domestic students, boarding students, and day students will return, our new ones. And then on September 6th, any other student is coming back on September 6th. Now, I know for some of our international students, these days are a little tricky because there aren't as many flights as there would normally be. And some of you have made arrangements to come back a day or two early You may be coming to campus. So if you've made those arrangements, don't let this calendar scare you. Those arrangements will hold. We're trying to accommodate everyone's needs, but to the extent that you're still making travel plans, do follow this if you can. Now, what should you expect when your child arrives? So first of all, in the next few days, sometime this week, every student and family will receive an email from the school that tells you or confirms your arrival date. On the arrival date, we'll be giving you a time slot, a window of time, usually an hour, during which we're asking you to arrive. The reason we're doing that is so that our students arrive at a pace that we can manage their arrival testing. And so it's not too crowded, you're not waiting in line too long. And so you'll get that email. It'll also tell you your exact sequence of events that day. And I'm going to go through what will happen likely on each day that you arrive. So again, wait for that email. What I'm showing you here is not the exact schedule. Not everyone is arriving at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. It's going to be a different hour slot for your day. All students should arrive at the CFTA parking lot. That's our Center for the Arts, and the address is 760 Beach Street in Pottstown. There'll be lots of signage. There'll be students waving flags. You'll find it, I promise. When you arrive there, students and parents can get out of their car. Students will proceed inside the CFTA lobby wearing a mask, please. And they will receive a packet with information about their rooms and the daily schedule, that sort of thing. And then they'll go downstairs. They'll be directed downstairs where Dr. Spencer and her team will be waiting to do a rapid 15-minute antigen test. Parents can either wait in their car, or there'll be a hospitality area outside with refreshments, coffee, and the like. There'll also be some restrooms available for parents during that time. Once your child has the all clear, they've passed their antigen test, they'll get back in the car and you can drive onto campus to deliver your whatever you've brought for your child to the dorm room. If you're coming by some sort of like taxi or a Lyft or Uber or chartered vehicle, just you'll all drive through together at that point. So don't proceed to your dorm until you've gone through the CFTA registration process. When you get to the dorm, there'll be a lot of people there waiting to help you. The dorm parents, our senior prefects, who I mentioned before, will be on campus. You won't have to lift very much. Most of that stuff will come right out of your vehicle and get right up into their room magically. If you want to help your child, if you're there, and a lot of you probably won't be there, but family members can help students with the move-in process if they're vaccinated, and we're asking all family members to be masked while they're with their child in the dorm. There'll be a head of school luncheon and parent information sessions at a welcome tent near the soccer pitch, or the football pitch, as you would say. And then we'll follow that with advisor meetings at various locations around campus. And then there'll be some continued dorm room setup, and then parents and families will depart while students continue their activities. As I say all of this, I realize that a lot of parents won't be able to join their children this year for this process because of the visa limitations. We certainly would welcome as many of you as can join. And I think we'll do our best to live stream some of these information sessions for you so you can participate online if your child is arriving on their own. So what does campus look like right now in terms of vaccination? In terms of our employees, we've done very well. 98% of our employees are fully vaccinated or in the process of being vaccinated as we speak. And so we'll start the year pretty close to 100% vaccinated for all of our employees, which is very important since they're older, since some of them are commuting, don't live on campus, so that we're proud of that number. We do have a few temporary medical exemptions for our employees, and 1% of our employees have enduring exemptions, which means that even beyond a time when the FDA approves the vaccines in full, these exemptions would endure. But it's literally, I think, two of our employees that have these enduring exemptions. As for our students, it's a little bit different. Right now, 90% of our students, of our 550 students, are either fully or partially vaccinated. They're in the process of being vaccinated. So on the beginning of school, we'll be at about 90%. 5.5% of our students have a 5-week grace period or temporary exemption while they, once they arrive in the United States. And this applies in mainly to our international students who haven't been able to get a vaccine in their home country. Not every country has available vaccines, or it's not been made eligible for children ages 12 to 18. And so many of our new international students are in this category. Most of our returning international students were able to be vaccinated last spring on campus. So this is a relatively small number, and they will begin the vaccination process almost immediately, perhaps even a day or two before they arrive on campus, depending on when they're getting to the United States. So we'll be working with those students. We have a handful of students, 3%, who have what we're calling temporary FDA exemptions. These are for families who felt strongly that they were not comfortable with vaccination until the FDA gave it full approval, which we expect will happen in early September, at which point they will proceed with the vaccination process. And so those students will be vaccinated probably around the same timetable as our international students in the previous category. And then we have a very small number, just 1.5% of our students who have enduring exemptions for medical or religious reasons. And so those are required by law in the state of Pennsylvania. But we've kept that to a very small number. So hopefully, if all goes according to plan, about 1 month into the school year, will be about 98%, 98.5% fully vaccinated among our student body. I think that's about as good herd immunity as one could have imagined in this circumstance. Of course, everything's changing a little bit, and there's different vaccines that are being used by our students and by our faculty and that sort of thing, and there's variants. But we still believe that at the very least, this will prevent the most serious illness among our students and faculty and staff. So that's the landscape of vaccination at Hill. And I just want to publicly thank Dr. Spencer and her team, who worked very hard since last winter to make sure that all of our community members had the option to be vaccinated, and have done a diligent job of tracking this and supporting all of the many questions that our families have had. So thank you, Dr. Spencer. Well done. Okay, so last week I sent out an email which prompted this Zoom call that included all of our opening of school guidelines as they have changed and evolved in light of the changing nature of COVID-19, and especially what we're learning about the Delta variant and the recent surge in the United States. You are able to get your news from multiple sources at this point. It is a concerning situation in some parts of the United States, in many parts of the United States, and it certainly is concerning going forward if it were to continue. We're fortunate that in Pennsylvania, we have a pretty high vaccination rate compared to most states. I think we're in the top 10 of the 50 states in terms of the total vaccination rates. Our incident level of COVID is moderate, I would say. It's similar to where we were last spring. Hospitalization is, we're not anywhere near capacity of hospitals. Our county is doing okay. But we are near a populated area, and so we have concerns that this could continue to surge forward. We also are hopeful that it will tail off fairly soon, like it has in other countries, but we're watching it very, very closely. And we, as you know, did a very good job managing COVID last year when we didn't have any vaccinations on campus. Of course, we've changed our policies quite a bit, so there's greater risk, but the vaccination helps as well. So what we're trying to do generally is to take a cautionary approach to the opening of school. to try to prevent as much as possible COVID coming to our campus. And as we settle in from 30 different countries and 30 different states, to try to reduce the chances of any kind of COVID outbreak on campus. And so we're just being cautious. We hope that after a few weeks, as our vaccination rates continue to go up, and as Delta variant hopefully goes down and we get settled in with our rhythm, that we'll be able to reduce some of these restrictions and get back to a much more normal school year. We're already back to a much more normal school year than we were last year at this time. So the first thing we're asking is that all students, vaccinated or unvaccinated, domestic or international, have a pre-arrival PCR test, which occurs 2 to 4 days before arriving on campus. Now, for most of you who are traveling internationally, you have to have this for a flight. You can bring that, you can upload that test result and bring a copy of that with you. However, some of you are arriving 5 days before your first day on campus just to get settled into the United States. So you will have to have another PCR test done once you get to the United States. They're pretty easy to do in the US. You can go to most of the major pharmacies. Most municipalities and towns have public sites where you can go and have a test done. The testing turnaround time can be anywhere from 24 hours to 48 to 72 hours. And so you should ask those questions. But please do upload and bring a printed copy of that pre-arrival test. The way this works is the day that you get your PCR test taken is day 0. And then it's day 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we think about in terms of how long it is before you get there. So that's the 4 days. So in many ways, it's sort of 5 calendar days, but 4 days since the taking of the test. Once you arrive, if you get a positive test, please don't come to campus. Remain where you are, contact the health center, contact Dr. Spencer, and we'll work with you to figure out how to do the quarantine or isolation at that point, which may be on campus, depending if a student is traveling alone, but we'll sort that out. Once you come to campus, as I mentioned earlier, all students will have a 15-minute rapid antigen test upon arrival. This is sort of a backup test. And again, we're hoping that all students will arrive with a negative test on that day. If they have a positive test and they're an international student, you should have assigned a guardian or host family within driving distance who could come and pick up your child. We will verify that test. Antigen tests are fairly accurate, but we have the ability to do a verifying PCR test at the same time. If that is positive, we will ask those students to be taken off campus and isolate for their 10 days, 10 or so days. It depends on the situation. If there is no other option, we do have some beds available for isolating students, but really all of our international students should have a host designated at this point. So you'll be receiving an email about that if you haven't designated a host. Assuming that all of our students come in, they're negative, they come to campus, we'll start the school year with universal indoor masking. And that means that all members of our community, while indoors, whether it's in the dormitories, the chapel, the classrooms, athletic center, vehicles, all of our students will be wearing masks and all of our employees will be wearing masks indoors, tentatively through the second full week of classes, which is September 19th. We'll reevaluate where things stand at that point, and we'll decide whether we're going to continue with masking after that date. Any students who are not fully vaccinated, and that means international students who have begun the vaccination process but are not through the 5-week sequence, will have a quiet period. And during that quiet period, they'll have continued testing twice a week. They'll also have, excuse me, let me take that back. During the quiet period is a 3-day period. During that 3-day period, we're asking our unvaccinated students to be more distanced from other students. And so that means that if they're in an athletics or group setting, we're asking them to stay 6 feet apart and to remain masked at all times. And then we will do a PCR test on day 3. And if they pass the PCR test, then they will be able to proceed as any other student would, still with universal indoor masking. All of our unvaccinated students will continue with their surveillance testing twice a week for the first 2 weeks. And then we will again reevaluate for all students, but especially for unvaccinated students, whether they will continue testing through the first month or so of school. And we'll announce that policy as things go. For the first 2 weeks of school, we've decided that we're trying to avoid full school meetings or full student body assembly groupings. And so normally we would have all of our students in the dining hall for lunch each day at the same time for a seated lunch, same for chapel and for school meetings. So this, for the first 2 weeks of school, we're going to alternate half of the school at lunch while the other half is at chapel or school meeting, and then flip it. And so it'll be about 300 students in a dining hall that is large enough for 600 students or 700 people total. So it'll be a little bit more spread out. We'll do that for the first 2 weeks. Again, just taking some extra precaution while we're still figuring out sort of the baseline of our community. The first 2 weeks of school, the first 2 weekends are considered closed weekends. None of our students are permitted to leave during those 2 weekends. It's how we build our community and bring everyone together to get to know each other. Students may walk off campus to one of the stores on the weekend or restaurant, but they have to do that properly through the dean's office. They have to check out using our Wave app, and we encourage them to stay outdoors. And we're going to limit some of this for unvaccinated students. And then lastly, we're asking all of our students, and this is our domestic students, our boarding students, our international students, and our day students, to just take caution when they're off campus. Certainly, whenever they're indoors off campus, they should be masked unless they're at their home. If they're in a public space, indoor or outdoor, large gatherings, we're asking them to be masked. And if they're doing some sort of off-campus club sport or activity, we're also asking them to remain masked, especially if it's indoors. We're not mandating all of these things, but we are very much asking people to take that caution, especially in this early part of the year while there's a COVID surge, just to keep our entire community healthy. We believe strongly in the vaccinations, but we're just not taking them for granted, especially during this early period. And we want to make sure that we're healthy and we can have a great, fantastic year. So, some questions that I've assembled based on emails that we've received. I just want to answer a few questions up front, and then we'll take all of your questions. And I see we already have a hand up, and we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box, which is great. First question, can parents and family members help with the dorm move-in? Yes, family members can help with the dorm move-in. We ask that they all be vaccinated if they're helping with the dorm move-in, and that they are wearing a mask. So I know many of you won't be able to be there, but you can be assured that the family members who are in the dorms are masked and are vaccinated. So that's good to know. I mentioned the quiet period. It's this 3-day period where we're asking students to be a little bit more distanced and to take some extra testing. That will apply to any of our international students who are arriving and beginning the vaccination process. So just be prepared for that and talk to your child, just so they know it's just for a few days. It's just to make sure that their travel period was uneventful from a viral perspective, we hope. As of right now, we have some limitations on parent visits to campus for the first 2 weeks. While we are allowing parent visits, we're keeping them all outdoors, other than using a restroom. And that's for vaccinated and unvaccinated students, and for vaccinated and unvaccinated parents. Beyond that 2-week period, we probably are going to limit parent visits to the indoor parent visits to those who are vaccinated, and for students who are vaccinated. But unvaccinated parents or parents of unvaccinated students will be able to come to campus, but they'll probably be outdoors for the foreseeable future until we square that away. Students will be able to leave campus on weekends after that first 2-week period, if it's an open weekend. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Obviously, it has to be done through our WAVE program, and we're asking students to be cautious off campus. We may ask students to retest on their arrival back to campus or have another quiet period, depending on their vaccination status. Certainly, students are not required to leave on weekends, and we'd love to have students stay and enjoy the weekend activities and the community. And it's safer. We think it's safer on campus if they can stay. Students can take a day leave or walk off campus to shop or to dine. We are asking unvaccinated students to limit dining to outdoor dining. Vaccinated students can go indoors, but of course we still encourage outdoor dining and limiting your time indoors and being masked at all times when you're indoors. A non-COVID question, when are roommates and rooming assignments being posted? That goes out tomorrow. So you'll see that on my backpack. Roommate assignments and your room assignment will be posted tomorrow. Exciting for our students. When will a determination be made about ongoing mitigation guidelines after the first 2 weeks? And we will make that decision probably close to the end of those first 2 weeks. We're really going to watch the data carefully, the rates locally, see how our students are doing, see how our testing is going on campus, and make a determination at that point. It may be that we are going to continue with the indoor masking beyond the first 2 weeks. It will really depend on a lot of factors. We're hopeful that our high level of vaccination will really protect us, but we do want to be cautious. Do international students need to have a local guardian or host family? The answer to that is yes. Because of the possibility of a student having to be quarantined or isolated due to illness or close contact, especially because many of our international students are beginning the year unvaccinated, they really need to have a local guardian or host family. You'll be receiving an email today from Helen Cho, our international student liaison and family liaison. And so if you don't have a guardian or host family, if you don't know someone in the States where your child could be, could go to, she will work with you to establish one of those relationships, either from one of our families, current domestic families, or there's some services available for a fee that families can use. The last question here, can international students stay on campus during long weekends and holiday recesses? Our answer to that, as of right now, is no. Our normal school policy is that when we close campus for a long weekend or a holiday recess, that all students must leave campus. If things change dramatically in the United States, we may change that policy, but we really need to give our faculty and staff, and especially our medical team, a chance to re-energize during those periods and to regroup and to refresh. So please make plans as of right now for the long weekend, the long fall weekend, and Thanksgiving recess. Those are times that you should be planning for your child to not be on campus. All right. How'd I do, Dr. Spencer? Good answers?
Great answers. Thank you. Yes.
Did I miss anything?
I do want to chime in about those who are arriving without vaccination completed. We are so happy to help your student get vaccinated after arrival here. We have uploaded onto the portal a Rite Aid consent form. And if your student has a temporary exemption from the vaccine expectation with the thought of needing to get vaccinated after arriving at Hill, you should have received a secure portal message with that information. But I would remind you to please go ahead and to do that now, to fill out that vaccine consent form, upload it, and we'll be able to work on that promptly after arrival.
Thanks, Doc. Okay, so we're going to go to the questions here. The first question is, do students still need a PCR test within 4 days prior to arrival, since there will be an antigen test upon arrival? The answer to that is yes. So the PCR test is still the gold standard. It's still more accurate than the antigen test. And so we are asking all students to have that PCR test in addition to the antigen test. It also, by asking you to do it 4 days prior to arrival, it avoids a situation where if you're positive 4 days prior to arrival, you don't come to campus and then have to scramble when you get to campus to find somewhere to go. So please have a PCR test done 2 to 4 days prior to arrival. Second question, are international students able to apply for remote learning for the H-term so that they can return home? Thanks. Sort of, yes. In early September, international student, any student, will be able to apply for a remote independent project. So we are not allowing any students to participate in our H-term classes that our teachers are teaching remotely. Those will all be done in person. So if an international student wants to return home for the month of December, they can do so, but they have to apply for an independent project, like an internship or an independent class or something along those lines. That will all be explained in the early part of the school year to students and parents, and they can apply for that. Again, if a student is a varsity athlete, winter athlete, or a member of the winter theatrical production, they do need to plan to be on campus during the H-term, because those programs will continue. Dr. Spencer, what if a student finished her vaccinations less than 14 days before entering campus? Is there any special treatment?
We will really be looking for that full vaccination status. So being 2 weeks past the terminal shot, so the second shot in a 2-shot series is what most of our students will get. Then 2 weeks is that kind of magic point where we consider the student fully vaccinated. So we will look at some additional testing if the student is not at that 2-week point yet.
Thanks. This is another question for you, Dr. Spencer. Some people have lost their vaccine neutralizing antibodies in 6 months. Will you test those who have been vaccinated periodically to ensure they have enough antibodies, or even if they still have, they might still get infected? Do you think it is still important to test from time to time, or if they don't have antibodies, do you require them to retake vaccinations?
We are talking with public health about that, but there is no real standard on antibody testing at this time. There's a lot of variability in the testing, a lot of difference in quality. There's not great data on how to interpret and when to inform boosting. So that really is not an option for us yet. It may become in the next several months, but we're certainly also watching recommendations for who will be approved for a booster maybe down the road. It's very limited right now and our students don't qualify. We'll be watching that. And we'll also be watching for recommendations from public health regarding if a student had a specific vaccine from overseas that maybe is not felt to be as enduring protection as the others, there may be a recommendation for booster sooner. So this is all kind of stay tuned, we'll be watching.
And I will say we have the capacity on campus to do antigen testing, rapid and rapid PCR testing. We don't have antibody testing on campus, correct, Dr. Spencer?
Correct.
So depending on how things go, we will be able to continue with testing of symptomatic students. We'll be able to do surveillance testing if we need to or want to, or in special circumstances. For example, Dr. Spencer and I were talking yesterday about our water polo team who are indoors, practicing indoors, competing indoors, but obviously can't be masked when they're in the pool. And so we may be doing some surveillance testing on the water polo team or random testing or pool testing as the year continues. So there is a chance that we'll be doing some surveillance testing of vaccinated and unvaccinated students and employees periodically. So we'll just see how that goes. All right, a non-COVID question. I'm going to take this one, Dr. Spencer. It's about textbooks. There's a question regarding textbook ordering. I ordered on the eCampus and wanted to ship it to the Hill directly. However, when I was checking out, it needed a phone number and it had to be a US one. I currently don't have a US phone number, so I'm not sure what I really should do. If I were you, I would just put in the school's phone number as the US phone number, so you can get that on our website. Or you can put a phone number in of a friend who lives in the United States. And if you're still having a trouble with that, please email Ms. Kim. Her email address is bkim@thehill.org, Bo Kim, bkim@thehill.org, and she will help you with that process. Dr. Spencer, my son got the first dose of Sinovac and hopefully will get the second next weekend. We will upload his vaccinated certificate as soon as possible. After his arrival, is he regarded as a vaccinated student?
He will be regarded as fully vaccinated 2 weeks after that second shot. So at this time, we are accepting all vaccines that the World Health Organization accepts.
Great. Okay, let's go to the chat room here. Well, it looks like Dr. Spencer is putting up some information, maybe.
That's the Rite Aid consent form for the vaccination if your student needs to be vaccinated upon arrival.
Right. So if you look in the chat box, everybody, if you're looking for the consent form for vaccination upon arrival, Dr. Spencer has included a link there where you can download the form from Rite Aid, which is a local pharmacy, that you can complete, and then you'll be able to get vaccinated right when you arrive. Okay, we have a hand up. Let's see if this works. Cece's mom, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Cece's mom, are you there? Cece's mom has her hand up. I'm gonna give it a second here. It's our first hand up, Dr. Spencer. It's exciting.
It appears she's muted though.
Yeah, she's muted. I've asked her to unmute. Oh, let's see here. Well, Cece's mom, I'm letting you talk if you want to talk. Otherwise, do we have any other questions? We have about 40 people on the call today, which is great. Hopefully we're answering a lot of questions. We're just going to give it a minute here. We still have some time left in our hour. I know it's getting a little bit late where some of you are. Anybody want to raise their hand? Anyone want to just say hi? I think we've got most of our questions answered. Oh. Saw a hand go up, then went down. Dr. Spencer, any comments?
I just want to share with everybody how excited we are to welcome your students back. This is going to be a really nice year. We're looking forward to getting back to our normal rhythm, our normal activities, our culture, and we're thrilled that your students are part of that. So thank you.
All right, a hand went up. It's Helen. Hello, Helen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Helen.
My name is actually Maggie. I don't know why my name turned to Helen.
Maggie, how are you? Maggie, you're a new third former, right?
Yes.
Welcome to the call.
Thank you. So I'm an international student, and I've been wondering, since I will be arriving on campus on August 31st, will there be time for the school to let us go to like shops to buy such things such as blankets and electronic equipment as we arrive there?
Yes, thanks for that question, Maggie. It's a good question. All of our new students will have, we'll do some field trips to some local stores and malls to do some shopping. That'll be organized by the Office of Community Life. We usually go to Target, which is a big store near us, and you can get pretty much anything you need there. There's some other shops nearby as well. So if you need toiletries or blankets or a cell phone or something along those lines, you can do that there. Of course, we're going to be ask all students to be masked while they're doing that, and just be cautious while they're doing that. So we'll make those arrangements for you, Maggie.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for joining us. We can't wait to see you. Travel safe.
Thank you, me too.
Bye, Maggie.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Two more questions popped up in the Q&A box. Is the school able to help my student get a US phone number on arrival? The answer to that is yes. We work with different cell phone providers, and we'll work on that as soon as your child arrives on campus. You mentioned host families for all international students. Will one be designated for every international student? The answer to that is no. We've asked our international students to designate their own guardian or host family who can help with COVID-19 issues. If you cannot do that, we can help you try to find one. Please contact Helen Cho, hqiu@thehill.org, and she can help with that process. Hi, Mr. Lehman and Dr. Spencer. I will be fully vaccinated before the start of the school. Do I need to receive the third dose after I arrive on campus?
No, at this time, there is not a recommendation for young, healthy individuals to be receiving a booster. That may come with public health guidance down the road. I would not be surprised if at some point boosters become recommended, but at this point, it's very limited population for which that applies, and I don't expect most of our students will not need that at this point.
Dr. Spencer, the question hasn't been asked, but I'd like to ask it. Has there been any update on whether a student who's been vaccinated with Sinovac or Sputnik or AstraZeneca, is there any update on whether those students should be receiving either Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Moderna once they arrive in the United States?
There is not an update from public health on that yet.
Okay. So we'll stay tuned and we'll stay in touch with our families if that develops. And we'll certainly, our international families should know that we have a very good relationship with the Department of Public Health and also with Rite Aid. And we can work very quickly to have those vaccinations done either on campus or very nearby, and we can make arrangements for that. Could students who spent one whole year remotely arrive early to school like new students? Yes, you're supposed to. But you wouldn't arrive as a new third form student. So you would arrive with the new international students. So if that's something you would like to do, you should be doing, please reach out to the school, to the Office of Community Life, to Mrs. Winter, awinter@thehill.org, and she will help you with that change. Okay. I think I've answered most of the questions. I'll give it another minute here. Any other questions? Sun's coming out here, Dr. Spencer. For those of you, I'm looking out at a beautiful lake here, so I'm enjoying the view out on my porch here of my cabin. I don't see any other questions. Anyone else with a question? Well, I'll just wrap up and say we're delighted that you joined us today. We have been working really hard since a year and a half ago to keep Hill offering a robust and exceptional student experience and program. Our team has become quite experienced at doing this, and we're happy that we're going into this school year in a much better place than we were last year. We will have some inconveniences and some restrictions, some mitigation steps, but to be welcoming 547 students from around the world for an exceptional year is very exciting to us. So I wish you all good night. I wish you safe travels, and we can't wait to welcome you to Hill in just a matter of weeks. Take care now. Have a good night.